Hello, it's Jane Turner here from writewithjane.com, and I am blessed to have Annette Densham with me. Now, we've all heard it said that shit happens, and I don't think I know a single person for whom shit hasn't happened. So I think we all need a copy of Annette's book, and I think it should be in schools as well, for what it's worth, Annette. And the wonderful title, How to Eat a Shit Sandwich and Keep Smiling. So welcome, Annette. Tell me all about it and what motivated you to write the book.
Thank you, Jane. Yeah, there's some sections of my book that probably should be like a Clio sealed section. It gets a bit raunchy. So maybe we might remove those for the kids. Unless, of course, it's sex education, then it'll be totally appropriate. So my book really came, like, I'm a writer. I've been a writer my whole life. From the moment I could hold a pencil or crayons or pens, I've been drawing and writing stories and poetry and, asking questions and sticking my nose in places where maybe it shouldn't be, but I'm just an insatiable sticky beak. And I've got this, I know, almost childlike curiosity about the world and about human beings. So my career began as a journalist, so writing people's stories. And I was one of these writers that was like, one day I'm going to write a book. But, when you write for a living, sometimes the idea of writing a book is like, oh, my God, really, I've got to sit down at the computer again. I don't know what I'm going to write about. So a couple of years ago, one of my very good friends is Cathartic. So she was bringing together an anthology book called I Fly. And I went, I might have a crack at this. What a really good way to get some coaching around being more creative with my writing rather than, just writing who, what, when, where, how, why, the style that you do for journalism. So I went on that journey with her and picked a moment in my life. So it was about I Fly, a moment in your life where you've been tested and you've rebounded and gone on to do whatever it is that you do. So I picked a really significant moment in my childhood, which really changed how I looked at myself, how I looked at my family, and how I looked at men. So I went through that, and Catherine was just so good in terms of her feedback on how I could elevate my writing to a different level. And for the first time in a very long time, I was writing, these beautiful prose of descriptiveness. And it was, I got to the end and I was like, wow, I even impressed myself.
Good.
And then I went, why not write a whole book about your life? So How to Eat a Shit Sandwich is about my life from my first moment that I remember. I was probably around 3 to when I turned 25. So it's really about the first quarter of my life and some of the things that happened to shape the person that I am today.
Fantastic. And did you have a reader in mind when you were writing it, Annette? Was there, someone like you 10 years ago or something like that?
Yeah, I did. I was really writing it for other women. I was writing it for other women because I wanted them to know that all of the shit things that have happened to them, particularly at the hands of men and the patriarchal, misogynistic world, many of our age group have grown up with. If you're born in the 60s and 70s, then you've been brought up by women who have been told that they can't do things and they shouldn't do things because they're women. And that trickled through my childhood, and I think a lot of ways subconsciously stopped me from doing things that I'm watching males do, and it's like, well, I can do that, and it's like, well, you're not allowed to because you're a woman or you're a girl. And also the violence that many women have to live with. And when I say have to live with, it's almost like we have to live with it because we're the ones who are trying to change, and the people that we really need to change are still like going, what are you complaining about? So I really wanted to empower other women to own their stories, their battle scars, their trauma, not as a competition, but more as your story has value. The things that you have been through are what has shaped you. It hasn't defined you, it's shaped you, and that has value and worth in this world. And, I thought if I can air my dirty laundry, so to speak, in a book, I wanted to show that, what's the worst thing that can happen? And really, I've had no nothing bad happened come back. Well, except for maybe the fact that half my family don't speak to me anymore. But, I hardly spoke to them anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I've not really lost anything.
Maybe that's not a bad thing.
Maybe, they're part of the problem. But the feedback that I've received from women who've read my book have said how inspiring, how empowering. I've had a similar story to you, and I can see how you've changed your life to not be a victim to circumstance, but a champion for change and a champion for self-confidence and overcoming imposter syndrome. So that's my audience. I want other women, like not just my age group, but younger women, to know you don't have to put up with this shit. Just because someone is saying that you have to do something, or you've got to stay somewhere, or that if it doesn't serve you and it doesn't serve your goals and your ambitions, it's actually okay to go, I'm going to put myself first. And I wish I had done that when I was younger. Didn't. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, but when you can write about it and you know that the ripple effect of your words can maybe change someone else's life, I think that's a pretty cool thing.
You bet it is. And from your own point of view, was it a cathartic experience to write that story?
Yes, if I just got goosebumps. And I took a big deep breath. Yes. In the moment, there were
too many to talk about.
So many tears and anger, and I'd read it or share it with my husband, and he'd go, I have no idea these things happen to you, and he would get angry, and so we had many deep and profound conversations about healing and how much you share with your partner as you're forming relationships. Mind you, we've been together almost 30 years, and I thought he knew everything about me. So yeah, it was at the end. I guess it really triggered for me that I needed to make some massive changes in my life. I was incredibly overweight because of all the emotional trauma that I'd been carrying through my life. Through my thyroid just packed up and went to Billy's and didn't tell me. So my health really suffered. And ending that book and reading it back and looking at the impact it was made me realize that I needed to continue changing my life. That wasn't the full stop on Annette's story. And that if I wanted to be here to write the third quarter of my life, from 50 to 75, then I needed to make some changes. And it was really healing too, because as I was writing it, I had a plan, but some of these chapters evolved just because my fingers would get going, and then my brain would go, remember this? And I'd write it and I'd go, oh my, like it'd take my breath away to go, I don't even remember that happening. And now that I've written it, it's like, no wonder I was making the choices I was making.
That's the magic though, isn't it? Part of these kind of books, part of them actually write themselves, and especially where you're comfortable to write anyway, and you'd gotten in the flow, and the conscious mind then didn't have to be so darn focused on who it reckoned you were meant to be, and that sort of gatekeeper almost opens up, and some other stuff comes up, and what a beautiful thing that is when it happens.
And the style that I took in writing the book was each chapter. I was talking to a friend yesterday. She said each chapter is like a standalone story. There's a flow, but I wrote it in the voice of the person I was at the time. So the story opens as 3-year-old Annette with her father dumping her and her mother and her younger sister in this furnishless flat in Hobart, dumping some money on the table and pissing off to shack up with his latest squeeze. So, and I wrote it as a 3-year-old. The language I use was, I'm not 3 anymore, but I've got 3-year-olds that hang around me occasionally. So, I was drawing from, what was the language that they use? How would I have seen this as a kid? So every stage, then I go to 7 and then 10 and then 15 and then, so you can really see me evolving as a human being because of the way, and I wrote it as a fiction story. It's non-fiction because it's my life.
Yeah.
But I wrote it as, so if you picked it up and read it, you would think that you're reading a fictional book. It's a very dialogue heavy, very descriptive. And if you ever read any Stephen King, you'll certainly see Stephen King's influence in my books.
Oh, well, what a way to be influenced. That's fantastic. And what a way also to relax people into the reading of what would at times be quite heavy material. So you've mentioned that, of course, the writing of it all down got you to see that that wasn't the end. That's kind of the beginning, and that if you want to write your third book, you better still be alive. And therefore, you made a whole lot of changes. From perhaps a less sort of personal perspective, but still, what change has the book made in terms of that ripple effect with your business, with your, people reaching out to you? How's that all gone?
It's given me confidence. Not that I was unconfident before, but I was so caught up in the pain and, subconsciously, in the pain of my past, that having that catharsis of putting it on paper and sharing it changed me as a human being, not for the worse, I hope, hopefully for the better.
I think it sounds like it, yeah.
But it I realized that, what my voice has value. The lessons that I've learned have value, and how do I apply that to my business? So I think the way that I show up now has morphed into, this far more confident, competent human being who is not afraid to say what she thinks or what she feels, regardless of maybe unless it's about the Queen. I learnt the hard way about that one. But anyway, that's a whole other story. Don't touch the Queen, Annette. Stay away from the Queen, especially on the day that she passes away. So just keep moving. Yep. Mostly, I'm not afraid to touch any topic. Like this week, I wrote about going into menopause, and the history of sanitary products from my perspective as a kid to adulthood. So I write about these things now because it's like these are things we should be talking about. We shouldn't be talking about, the latest TikTok video and where you hang your shopping bag on a trolley, or, what the best look is for summer, or what women over 50 should be wearing. We should be talking about these really, really deep and meaningful topics that help us connect and relate to each other better, because I feel the biggest problems in the world is because we don't communicate well enough with each other. We leave things unsaid, and then we live with regret. And from a business perspective, I think that is really rippling through the messaging that I'm delivering through, my business page and through my personal page, is that your story has value.
Yes.
Because I work in PR, don't shy away from recognizing your wins, enter awards, go on podcasts, write to newspapers, do all of the stuff and the things which put you in front of people who need what you've got. So I guess that's how it's really changed our business. And I've found that it's so much easier to sell now because people already know me. Like, I don't know them, but they know me. Because I'm so trust. So I've built that trust, because when you see me online as the same person that you're going to see if you have an interview with, I swear, and I'm, show up in my pajamas, and I say what I think, and I don't beat around the bush.
Hey, more power to you. So we've kind of moved into the business now, but I want to hear more about what you can do for my authors, for example, and that you do for people in general. But I really want to spread the word across my tribe of authors about, don't just write the book. Don't do that big thing and then leave it at that, because, as you've said, you came out the other end and went for crazy.
Yeah. How many people do that? Not just with books. So our specialty at the Audacious Agency is writing awards, business awards, book awards, marketing awards, real estate award, you name it, whatever the award is. It's all about drawing the information out and telling the story. Authors, they spend all of this time investing in writing their book, and then it just goes on their shelf, and it's like, well, that was a really interesting exercise. I got a lot out of that. But, they're still the world's best kept secret. So what we do is we like working with authors even before they publish,
Mm-hmm.
because it's all about building the buzz.
True.
So, like I sold out my first print run even before my book was printed, because I was constantly talking about my book. Not so much that I was writing a book, but I would pick topics out of what I was writing and frame some content around that, and then finish it with my book's, it's not long. My book's heading to the editor. Each phase of my book was like, the book's heading to the editor, the book's gone to the printer, the book's done this, really bringing in that personal story. So people were intrigued. They wanted to know more. And I would always have a link to a pre-purchase page where it was like, you're getting this book at a discount, as soon as it comes out. I also did a book launch that was a little bit different to probably most book launches. I put on a comedy show, and it was comedians who were sharing about, they didn't use these words, but, how they've taken their shit sandwiches and turned it into comedy. So I think I had 6 comedians. I got up, said hello and thank you. But everyone who came bought a ticket, and they had the option of buying a ticket and buying a book. So everybody bought a ticket and bought a book. So I filled the room with 120 people who mostly all bought a book. So there was another, 4 boxes of books sold. So for authors, start thinking about what do you want to share before the book is published, and have a bit of a plan around, drawing your audience in and starting to curate and bring them into the ride with you. And then after the book, you also need a plan on how you continue to talk about the book. So my book was published May last year. I'm still banging on about it. I will bang on about that book until I've got a new book that comes out.
Yes.
And I've entered book awards for my book. So far I've won my brain just went, Business Book Excellence Awards.
Mm-hmm.
I was a distinguished favourite in the New York Big Book Awards. I'm waiting to hear if I'm a finalist in the Australian Business Book Awards. Even though my book's a memoir, there's a lot of, there's a lot that people can use to build confidence through my book. So find those other aspects of how you can continue to promote podcasts. There's so many people like you, Jane, out there who are interested and intrigued in people's stories and how they came up with their book. What was the process of writing their book? What was the hardest thing about writing their book? I mean, geez, all the questions that you've asked me about my book would be really great story points for anyone who is an author looking to promote their books to do a post. What is your book about? What was the hardest thing about writing your book? How did you feel once it was finished? People want to know that stuff. This is why we show up and we watch things like Farmer Wants a Wife and Married at First Sight. We want to know the background and ins and outs of people's lives. We are insatiably curious human beings. So feed off that as an author. Send out media releases, send out books to be reviewed, follow up on people who've bought your book and encourage them to leave a review or a testimonial, because that's what helps sells the book once it's published, is reading what other people think about it. So my best advice is create a plan. What's one thing that you can do every week to promote your book for the next 12 to 18 months after you publish it, so it just doesn't become, how many people do you know, Jane, who go, you've spent thousands and thousands of dollars on writing their book, bought 1,000 copies, and they're still sitting in the garage?
Yeah, it's tragic.
Yeah, I give heaps of my books away. Like a few weeks ago, I went, I've been in a few anthologies and I've got this nice little collection of books with my name in it. And I put a post up on Facebook, who'd like something to read? I've got 10 book packs to give to somebody, or let me know someone who you think would like a surprise gift in the mail and I'll send them some books. And
that's a great idea.
Yeah, so it's just really the only thing that can stop you from promoting your book is yourself. There's so many people out there who really need to hear and want to hear what you've got to say. It's just about beating that voice in your head. My business partner Lauren calls it the itty bitty shitty committee. That one that says,
nice.
why does Jane really want to talk to me? Like, I've really not done anything. Instead, just go, you asked me, and I went, sure, absolutely.
And I can't tell you how much I respect you for that. I just thought, wow, that was easy. Because for me, there's that little shitty itty bitty committee in my head going, oh, she's got too big a profile. She wouldn't be interested to come onto mine. Oh my God, we got to get over ourselves.
We do.
Even though it happens, like it doesn't have to not happen. You're not failing if that happens in your head, but just go fuck off. I'm going. Yeah, I'm doing it.
Absolutely. And that's the thing is like, I do a lot of talking around imposter syndrome because, when COVID was probably one of the best things that I think that happened to me personally and to our business is we had that time to reflect. And I was reflecting on why people, sign up to do PR with an agency like us, and 6 to 8 weeks they've pulled out. And it's like, we've only just started. Like,
exactly.
It's kind of like sitting down to a meal and then only eating half your entree and going, I don't want the rest. And I went, the biggest problem is us. We're our biggest problem. I say to people, you've got lots of tools that you can use in your business to promote yourself. You are one of those tools. You need to work out whether you're a good tool or you're just a tool, and they're like, Annette, you're so funny. But it's like, no, that's serious. If you are not marketing your business, if you are not talking about your book, if you're not talking about the stuff that you do, then no one else is going to do it for you. And you're right. You messaged me, and what went through my head was like, oh, why does she want to talk to me? Like, I'm nobody. And then my brain goes, shut up, dickhead. And my fingers go, sure. And it's like, I don't know what you want to talk to me about. I don't know what the questions are, but I just kind of figure, I know me. I know what's going on in my world. I can speak underwater with marbles in my mouth. And everybody has that capacity. If they just told that imposter or that itty bitty shitty committee to shut the fuck up and stop being annoying. It's like, be quiet, go away.
Yeah.
You're not helping me. I need to do this. So it's like, you've got nothing to lose. And particularly for, if you're being recorded, most people edit their recordings. If you stumble or you stuff up, then the person who's doing the interview will go, oh, well, we'll get rid of that, So, whenever you're being promoted by somebody else, a podcast or the media, they want you to look good as well. So they're always going to do their best to make sure you show up so they look good, you look good, and the reader or the audience comes back for more. They're not going to come back if it's a terrible interview.
Yeah, great. Well, look, I think we've covered a lot of territory here. I just want to thank you for your time, Annette. And at the end here, people will get the links to come and visit you and see what you do, because I think from the point of view of the authors that I work with, if they finish their book and if I can't take them further, I completely trust them in your hands. So I appreciate that we've had this time to kind of chew the fat. I love what you do, and I can't wait to see what you do next.